Let's start this deep dive not with a name, but with an image. A really stark, urgent image of institutionalized terror from mid-20th century America.
Mm.
I want you to picture Rosalie Ingram.
Mm.
She's a widowed black mother, 14 children, living in rural Georgia in 1949.
And the scene is it's horrifying. Her supposed crime was defending herself, defending her family from the aggressive, indecent advances of a white supremacist.
And for that single act of self-preservation, she and her 2 sons were sentenced to life in prison.
Right, and this wasn't just some local news story. It was a brutal public performance, really. It dramatized the deeply oppressed status of the black family.
And the systemic degradation of black womanhood. I mean, this was the system in action.
It just completely exposed the hypocrisy of the era. This idea of protecting white womanhood, while at the same time, the ruling class was perpetrating these foul, violent crimes against black families with total impunity.
And that terror, that institutionalized terror, it wasn't just a moment. It was the fire that forged the commitment of our subject today, Claudia Jones.
She saw the Ingram case immediately, recognized how serious it was.
And she declared the fight for Ingram's freedom a challenge to every single progressive person in the country.
She saw it for what it was, a front in a much bigger battle. And she knew that the courage you needed to speak up for what's right, it was immense, especially then. The country was moving towards, in her words, fascism and war.
So when you think about the consequences people faced, I mean, imprisonment, exile, violence, you have to ask yourself, how do you find that courage? How do you challenge power when the stakes are that high, not just for you, but for your whole community? That's the question that defined the incredible figure we're getting into today.
And that figure is Claudia Jones. Today, she's recognized as one of the most significant women of the 20th century. And not just for what she did, but for her ideas.
Her intellectual legacy is it's so profound. And this is where we need to really unpack the sources.
Yeah.
She's credited with systematizing this idea of black women's tripartite oppression.
Right. Oppression based on race, class, and gender, all at the same time.
It's the groundwork for modern intersectionality, decades before that term was even coined. I mean, she's really positioned as the mother of global revolutionary thought.
And her background is so crucial to understanding this. She was born in Trinidad in 1915, but then she moves to Harlem when she's 8.
So she grows up during the Great Depression.
Exactly. Experiencing that grinding poverty. And that's what shaped her understanding that economic hardship always hits black working families the hardest.
And she didn't just see it, she acted on it. She became a really high-profile, very effective leader in the Communist Party in the U.S.
Which we have to remember the context. This is the height of the Cold War, the Red Scare.
Right. So her political work made her a target.
A prime target. Her journalism, her organizing, it was so effective that she drew intense FBI surveillance. It led to multiple arrests, convictions under the Smith-McCarran Acts for her ideas.
And ultimately, deportation. She was exiled to London in 1955.
Yeah, let's pause on those acts for a second because the names don't really convey how serious they were.
No, they don't.
The Smith Act, the McCarran Act, they essentially criminalized what you thought. They made belonging to the Communist Party grounds for prison, or if you weren't a citizen, deportation. It was a climate of absolute fear.
Your thoughts were treated like treason.
Exactly. But even exile, the ultimate punishment from the state, it couldn't stop her. She just transitioned that political fire into a cultural force. And it was all rooted in this belief she had, a quote we found in the sources.
What's the quote?
"A people's art is the genesis of their freedom."
Wow. A people's art is the genesis of their freedom.
Okay, so let's unpack that. Let's follow her to London. Let's look at this flashpoint in her career there.
So after being exiled, she immediately gets back to work. She launches the West Indian Gazette and Afro-Caribbean News, which people called the Whig.
And this becomes Britain's first major black newspaper.
Yeah, it had a steady circulation of around 10,000, which was very respectable.
But the Whig wasn't born in a time of peace, was it? It was born right into a struggle. Right into it. It was a direct response, a counteraction to this series of vicious, racist attacks on West Indian migrants. It all culminated in the horrific 1958 Nottingham and Notting Hill riots.
The community was literally under siege, targeted, isolated.
So instead of just retreating or only protesting politically, Jones does something decisive. In 1959, she takes her ideas about culture and turns them into resistance. She organizes London's first ever Caribbean carnival.
Which would become the seed for the massive Notting Hill Carnival we know today.
That's the one.
This is where her genius is just so clear. This act of organizing joy music, celebration, it was a deliberate, powerful response to those attacks.
And to the police neglect that followed. It gave the community a way to be seen, to assert their identity not as victims, but as, in her words, artists, leaders, and human beings. It was resistance through visibility.
And the Whig, her newspaper, it played this key role in framing it all.
It worked to solidify this national pan-Caribbean identity for migrants, viewing them not as, separate people from different islands, but as part of an expanded Caribbean.
It's fascinating how she tied it all together. The local struggles in London with the global anti-colonial movements in Africa.
Yes. She'd cover the Congo's fight for independence right alongside community news from Notting Hill. She was using culture as this very specific, very targeted tool to fight marginalization and build self-determination.
It's such a powerful lesson. When outside forces are trying to diminish you or your identity, how can you consciously use your culture, your creativity, a community celebration as an act of power?
Just like she did. In her whole life, really, it perfectly aligned the head, the heart, and the hands. The mindset, the purpose, and the action.
Let's dive into the head first. Her new way of thinking, her big theoretical innovation.
Her major contribution was the systematic theory of the super-exploitation and tripartite oppression of the Black woman.
Okay, break that down.
She argued that Black women are oppressed on three fronts at the same time. As workers, which is class, as Black people, which is race, and as women, gender.
And the key was that these weren't just additive. It wasn't like a little bit of this plus a little bit of that.
No, exactly. They were multiplicative. The overlap created this unique vulnerability, this super exploitation. They were getting the lowest wages for the hardest work. So she rejected single-issue politics. She demanded this, what we now call an intersectional approach.
And then she elevates the whole struggle. She argues that the fight for Black women's liberation is the barometer for the status of all women.
Which led her to this really challenging statement. She said, the Black question in the United States is prior to and not equal to the woman question.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was designed to force action. It forced white women, progressive movements, to recognize their special responsibility to Black women whose struggles had been ignored by, both the mainstream civil rights movement and the early feminist movement. She said the most oppressed have to come first.
So that's the head. What about the heart? Her purpose?
It was absolute, full, unequivocal equality for my people, the Black people. But, and this is key, she believed that could only happen when it was allied with the working class and the global abolition of imperialism.
She was a true internationalist.
Completely. Her goal was a post-colonial socialist world. She connected Black women's liberation in the U.S. to the global struggle for peace and structural change.
That seems deeply principled. But politically? Linking the fight for a Black woman in Jim Crow Georgia to anti-colonial movements in Africa, wasn't that seen as just incredibly radical?
Oh, absolutely.
Did that fusion become a liability? Did it make her an easier target for the state?
That's the critical question, isn't it? And yes, it was a massive liability in Cold War America. It's exactly why the state came down on her so hard. They used the fear of communism to silence her.
But for her, it wasn't a choice.
It wasn't a choice, it was a structural necessity. She believed you couldn't get true liberation in one corner of the world while the global system of imperialism and capitalism was still running. The risk was worth it because the analysis demanded it.
That makes perfect sense. Okay, so on to the hands, the concrete action.
She applied all that complex theory to relentless practical organizing. This wasn't just writing essays.
Right.
She was on the ground for years, defending people like Paul Robeson, and, of course, victims of injustice like Rosalie Ingram. She helped make the Ingram case an international incident to expose American hypocrisy.
And as an editor at the Whig and before that with the Young Communist League, she was always pushing for action, exposing racism, promoting anti-colonial movements, and trying to build this genuine Black and white unity in the struggle.
Even when that was politically dangerous.
But what I find so interesting is she understood that it's not just about fighting. It's about thriving. She showed that Black liberation is tied to celebrating self-determination and joy.
Yes, the carnival.
The carnival. It's easy to just focus on the resistance, the sacrifice. But why was actively cultivating joy so central to her strategy?
Because without joy, resistance is just exhaustion. Joy, music, culture, a people's art. It's the affirmation that you exist, that your existence is valuable. It's the very thing the oppressor tries to take away.
The carnival was a public declaration of self-worth.
And community self-determination.
So, reflecting on that,
Oh.
where do you, right now, actively cultivate and celebrate Black joy, making it visible not just as a personal thing, but as a necessary part of resilience and resistance?
That's a great question, and it leads us to the challenge. Claudia Jones, as we said, was imprisoned for the crime of her ideas, of advocating for her people.
She knew that denying free speech to communists was just the first step. It would, as she said, only precede the denial of the exercise of these rights to all Americans.
Her life just screams this message about the power of an articulated idea.
And that's the challenge she gives us. We all have these critiques, these ideas for change that we hold, but we keep them quiet. We're afraid of the friction, the consequences.
She risked everything for an idea.
So here's our action challenge for you this week. Identify one structural critique or idea for social justice. It could be local, in your job, or even personal, that you believe needs a voice, but you usually leave it unspoken.
And don't just complain about it to a friend. The challenge is to find a safe but formal way to introduce that idea into the conversation.
Right, maybe it's writing a formal proposal, or a detailed note to a decision maker, or just speaking up in a structured, non-confrontational setting.
The goal is to present the idea of a structural change, not just a symptom.
And after you do that, after you exercise that courage, the very thing Jones was punished for, take a moment and reflect. How did that act of championing your idea impact your confidence, your sense of personal power?
It's powerful. Claudia Jones's life really confirms that saying. Limits of tyranny are the measure of our resistance. We've pulled so many enduring lessons from her work today.
Yeah, the key takeaways feel so critical. First, you have to recognize the complexity of oppression through that tripartite analysis. Second, culture is a revolutionary tool for survival.
And third, real conviction means you have to act, even when you're facing exile or prison.
And she left us with this powerful syllogism, didn't she? It ties it all together.
Black women's liberation and self-determination is bound up with the struggle for peace, human liberation, and structural transformation.
So if the most oppressed group is the barometer of freedom, what does the status of Black women in our world today tell us about the progress of all human liberation?
It's a heavy question to sit with. Her fight for structural transformation required this relentless dedication, this focus on self-determination, not external approval.
And that dedication to self-determination and radical change is exactly where we're headed next time. We'll be turning our attention to Thomas Sankara, another leader who demanded radical self-reliance for his people.
It's going to be a great one.
Join us next time for The Deep Dive.